Okay, a few more problems for us to work on. The emphasis of this video is for you to learn or understand that there are certain substituents, larger substituents, that have common names, and it will be necessary for you to learn them and memorize them. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Do you see this group that's coming off of the molecule right here? Let's click over here. In your notes that you might have printed off from our website, or at least you have access to on our website, underneath the alkane nomenclature section, in addition to these prefixes that you need to know, depending on the number of carbons that are in the longest chain of the molecule, there are also these common names for certain larger substituents that are hanging off of the chain. And so we were just looking at an example of a Y that was hanging off of a larger main chain. And when you see that, 3 carbons that are connected at the central carbon, that's called an isopropyl group. If we had 3 carbons hanging off of the longest chain and they were a 3-carbon substituent, but they were connected at an N carbon, then that would just be a propyl group. When they are connected at the central carbon, that's an isopropyl group. And then here we have 4 carbons that are making a funny Y kind of with a tail. There's 3 carbons here. The central is connected to a 4th carbon. That's connected to the main chain. That's isobutyl. But means 4, and there's a total of 4 carbons here. And these other two also have 4 carbons in them. Here we have 4 carbons in a row, and it is the 2nd carbon of the chain that's connected to the larger molecule. That's sec-butyl. It helps me to remember 2nd carbon and sec-butyl. And then here we have 4 carbons that I've had students in the past who have called this the chicken foot substituent or the claw. The 4 carbons are arranged so that they make this kind of hand, and then they're connected at the central carbon to the main chain. Okay, well, now that I showed you those common substituents, why don't you pause the video and then take some time to try and name this molecule right here. All right, and you're back. And the first thing that we need to do is figure out the longest chain of carbons in this molecule. If we go across, we have 2, 4, 6, 7. There's this kind of longer chain hanging down here. If we start on the right side, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If we start on the left side, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think that's the longest chain that we can find in this molecule, and 8 means octane, right? So we have an octane molecule. That's the root part of our name. And now we just have to figure out what prefixes to put in the front. So why don't I do this? I'm going to circle that long chain that I just found so I know what I've already taken care of. And I guess the next step is to number it. We know it has 8 carbons, but we want to have the lowest possible numbers for the substituents that are attached to it. If I number from the bottom up, 1, 2, 3, 4, then the first substituent I run into is number 4. If I number from the left to the right, 1, 2, 3 is the first number that I run into. So I think I'm going to number from the left to the right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And there are 2 groups that are outside of the chain. This single carbon right here, which would be a methyl, and then we have that Y that's attached at the center of 3 carbons. And what was that group called again? Let's see. I'm delaying while you shout it out at me. There we have the methyl, and you're right, this one is called isopropyl. Oh, and the other thing that we have to worry about is alphabetizing them. Let's click back over here for a second. So this is tricky. When we alphabetize isopropyl and isobutyl, which notice they are not italicized, they are both alphabetized by I. But when we alphabetize sec-butyl and tert-butyl, which notice the sec and the tert are italicized, we alphabetize actually by the B of butyl, just to make things challenging for us. But just remember, the italicized part does not count for alphabetizing. So this will be alphabetized by I, this will be alphabetized by M. I think I comes before M, so we're going to write 5 isopropyl 3-methyl. And I actually did a good job of budgeting my space. Everything fits in here. You always put hyphens between numbers and letters, but here we wouldn't need a hyphen at all. So 5-isopropyl 3-methyl octane. So as I said, these are common names for certain substituents, and they predate the IUPAC naming system. If you are interested, this is not something that I require for you to know. But instead of calling this an isopropyl group, you can use what's called the complex naming system for substituents. And then what you do is you already identified this as the root or the main chain of the molecule. And here is your larger substituent hanging off of this main chain. Basically, you have to find the longest chain of this larger substituent, starting from where it's connected to the main chain. And so if we count, we either have 1, 2 going up or 1, 2 going down. It doesn't really matter. But I'm going to put these smaller numbers in here because I'm just numbering for this substituent right here. And then that would be an ethyl group, right? 2 carbons is ethyl. And then you treat this other carbon that's hanging off of this chain that's coming off of the main chain of the molecule as another substituent. And so you need to use a parenthesis to do this. Instead of saying 5-isopropyl, you'll still say 5 because that's where, and then you'll have to do a parenthesis to show this is a complex substituent. And you would say, well, I have this methyl group hanging off of this chain, and it's attached to the first carbon of the ethyl, so it would be 1-methyl, treating this carbon as a little mini substituent, and then you would say ethyl, and that describes the rest of this substituent, and you end your parentheses. And once you do that, then you can continue with the name. But I think in this case, we'd be comparing methyl in terms of alphabetizing with methyl, so it's kind of tied. But then this one only has 6 letters. This one continues after the first 6 letters. So methyl will come first before 1-methyl ethyl. So if we want to name it properly using all IUPAC conventions, we'll say 3-methyl 5-1-methyl ethyl octane. And that is the only time I will talk about that or show that to you. I'm not requiring you to use this method, but instead what I'm encouraging you to do is memorize the names of those 4 larger substituents, the common names. If you pulled this out on a test and you did it correctly, I would definitely give you credit for it, but I kind of personally prefer to just remember those common names. Okay, next molecule. Pause me, work on it, come back when you're ready to talk about it. Alright, and so first we want to find the longest carbon chain. It looks like it's just going to be straight across, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, another no name. We do have a lot hanging down here. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's a little bit smaller going that direction. So it's these 9 carbons in a row. And then we have to decide, I think we're going to number from right to left in this case because it looks like the substituents are all grouped over here and they'll have lower numbers if we start on this end of the chain. And so we're going to have 2,2-difluoro, that's what we would call this. I guess I'll wait before I start writing it out. And then we have this group that's hanging off the 5th carbon right here. And do you recognize what it is? It's 4 carbons in a line connected at the 2nd carbon of the chain. That is a sec-butyl group. Sec-butyl. And this is a difluoro. Okay, so now we got to decide about alphabetizing our substituents, and this one can get tricky. We don't alphabetize by di, we alphabetize by the F instead here. And we don't alphabetize by sec. These little hyphenated headers at the beginning that are in italics, if you look actually in a textbook or on my organic chemistry course notes, if it's italicized, you don't alphabetize by it, unlike iso, which is not italicized. So we're going to alphabetize this one by butyl. I think B comes before F. So this is going to be 5-sec-butyl 2,2, oops, that should be a hyphen, not a comma there. That's now just a smudge on the paper. Difluoro, and then we can name our long chain, no name. Okay, and one more problem for us to work on. This time we're drawing out the molecule instead of naming it. And again, you can see this is why you need to have those common names memorized, because I might use them and then you'll be expected to know what I'm talking about. Why don't you pause this video and start to draw out this molecule. Come back when you're ready to talk about it. Okay, we have hexane molecule, so we need 6 carbons in a line. And then I'll just work from left to right, starting with the second carbon. That's where we first see substituents. We're going to have 2 chlorines coming off of the second carbon of the chain. And then now off the third carbon we have a tert butyl group. That is the one where you have 4 carbons and 3 carbons are all coming off of that 1 carbon that's connected to the chain. It's that chicken foot or claw substituent. That's what students have nicknamed it in the past. There it is coming off of the third carbon of the chain. And now 4th, 5th, we'll put 2 methyls over here coming off the 5th carbon of the chain. Alright, just keep practicing.